Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming presented by Codename Entertainment and TakeThis.org. Every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNDGames, normally Mitra Jordan and Raffael Boccamazzo, aka Dr. B, talk about mental health and how gaming affects us. If you're here with us live in the chat, you can leave a question that I, Treavor Bettis, will ask them later in the show. I can read words today, I swear.
Can you read words today?
Who knows? At this point, I don't. But anywho, our topic today is actually, we're doing an autism AMA, and for that, we actually have a very special guest. Mackenzie, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
If folks in the chat don't know who you are, who are you for those fine folks?
So I am Mackenzie DeArmas. I am a game designer for Dungeons and Dragons over at Wizards of the Coast. So I work on the explanation I give to people who don't really Dungeons and Dragons is if you go to a Barnes and Noble and go to the D&D section and open one of those books, it probably helped put some of those words into that book.
Heck yeah, I love that description. But why are you here today for this episode?
I'm autistic or something.
Hey, okay, well there we go. So, you know what's great?
No
it's
notes.
Like we did not prep that question or anything. I was like, I'm pretty sure I can pitch this question Mackenzie's got.
I don't know, man. I'm autistic or something. So y'all wanted someone who was autistic to ask questions to, and I happen to be available.
Well, we wanted to get one of the best people too, and that's why Dr. B reached out to you. And yes, chat, this is going to be 50 minutes of an ADHD fielding questions to two autistic people about autism. So this is going to be a blast. And at the top of the show here, I will say, put your questions into the chat for this autism AMA. Put question in all caps, then colon, and then your question. And there are awesome mods. We'll grab those, put in a little text doc, and we will discuss them. And we're going to give you some time to do that. We do have one question that came in from Twitter, but we're going to hold on to that for a little bit. And we're just going to kind of start things off the way that we normally do, which is, why are we talking about this?
God, well, I mean, let's just be real about it. We've done this before. I am also autistic. I'm very public about being both ADHD and autistic. ADHD. And there are a lot of misconceptions about what autism is. There's a lot of misconceptions about what it's like to be autistic. There's a lot of misconceptions about especially what autism looks like and how it manifests in anybody outside of the narrow band of cis males. And so we want to talk about that, and we wanted to actually get somebody else's perspective who isn't me.
Don't get us wrong, we do like hearing you talk, Dr. B. But yeah,
I mean, certainly I do.
But yeah, we've done one of these before. I think have we only done one of these?
Yeah, we did one. I think it was like our
and that was
12th
before
episode or
that
something.
you had your ADHD
diagnosis.
too.
No, that was when I suspected but didn't know.
I didn't have the notes. Dr. B, you have the notes up.
I do have the notes.
What was the first thing we were going to talk about that I totally wasn't prepared for?
So, Mackenzie, if you feel comfortable talking about it, what prompted you to seek out a diagnosis in the first place?
So the funny thing is, I didn't technically seek out the autism diagnosis. It kind of just came alongside the everything else is an issue diagnosis. So basically what happened was I was struggling during university, and I don't remember what compelled me to finally like go and do it but I went to the university psychology or like therapy office to go get help. I mostly went because I was depressed. And I was just really struggling. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't know what was wrong or why I wasn't like fitting in and why I couldn't make friends on campus. So I went and I did the yield quiz, and I talked with the therapist, and then I talked with the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist basically was like, yeah, no, you're definitely depressed. You're also probably autistic, but like you seem pretty well adjusted, so there's not much we can do. Spoiler alert, I was not well adjusted.
Was that really how they just laid it out? It was just
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
we're just gonna break down the door on this one, and okay, wow.
They basically were like, yeah, you have signs of like generalized depression, possibly a little social anxiety, and basically like you're probably like autistic or somewhere on the autism spectrum. But you seem pretty well adjusted, so there's not much you can do about that. That part is direct quotes.
Wow.
And spoiler alert, I was not well adjusted. I was just really, really good at masking. And then it all came tumbling down after university when I burnt out.
Oh.
God, oh my God. We've already got people in the chat going, "It me," and you're bringing us something up that we didn't think about or put in our document, but as a fellow sufferer of anxiety, as like 90 gajillion% of autistic folks tend to be, should we talk about that a little bit? Like how it's different than a lot of other people's anxiety? Like
It's
for
wild.
you, like how?
It's so weird because my partner has anxiety but is not autistic. And so we have like parallel experiences, but the way we approach them is so different. Because the way I approach it is almost this like I will just pause and then dissociate and zoom out and then try and like analyze like almost like a computer program, like try and figure out what's the most appropriate response to the situation and try and read someone's facial expressions and listen to their tone of voice and then do the matrix of like trying to match what they're saying with how they're looking at me and trying to determine whether or not they like me. It's like, I think the best way I can describe it, it's less of the default assuming no one likes me and more of the anxiety stems from, am I reading this correctly?
Right.
I don't know. Am I reacting the correct way?
Right.
I don't know. And it's such a small but specific difference.
Oh my God,
in
yes.
anxiety and how you approach social situations, and it's just wild.
Well, and also there's something just fundamentally different about let me take a step back, because this is something I've talked about with clients before as well. And this is certainly my experience, is avoidance and aversion certainly can happen as a natural response to feeling anxiety, but there's so many different reasons for avoidance and aversion when you're autistic in a world that's not built for you. Because as you're talking about this, like, am I reading the responses correctly? Here I am just going, okay, I believe they're running social program 73 alpha. All right, match response to 73 alpha. No, you gave 85 beta. That's a problem. And then trying to just like min-max social situations. And the problem is, at least for me, I want to speak only for me, I have gotten things wrong.
Oh yeah.
And not known it. And I have realistically gotten things wrong and not known it. And it's happened so many times. There's this constant fear in my head of, is this going to be the time I do it and not hear about it for months?
Yep.
Is this going to be the time I anger someone just enough that they remember it, but not enough that they'll tell me right now, and it'll fester for months until it finally comes out?
Yep. I have a very similar thing. I know for mine, it stems from I think this is a common experience for a lot of folks who are especially like late diagnosed or late self-diagnosed autistic
Yeah.
folks, especially who didn't realize they were autistic until way
Yeah.
later. Thinking back to your like school experience and realizing you were heavily bullied, but you didn't realize it. And that's where my fear comes from, because all the bullying happened behind my back. And I didn't read any of the social cues. And I
Right.
only caught whiffs of it, but I was just kind of like, well, if they have a problem, they'll tell me. Like, I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. And I just wasn't operating under the same social model that every other high school kid was operating under.
Right.
And then I didn't realize that people were making fun of me until way later, when I was sort of realizing those weren't normal responses to a person, or they were just humoring me. And now there is this constant fear of someone will react pleasantly to me, but talk badly about me or make fun of me behind my back. And that is where my anxiety comes from about responding to things wrong.
Right. And then on top of things, one of the there's research that's come out about the fact that in autistic individuals, there's a brain structure that we all have called the amygdala that's largely responsible for our fear responses. And in autistic folks, our amygdala is a little bit sensitive, a little bit more sensitive than other folks. Essentially, it hyper responds.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually experience more anxiety more intensely than
Mm-hmm.
other people. And because of the social correlates, we have a lot of reason to.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a gnarly combo.
Yep.
That's a technical
and also,
term.
Yeah. The scientific term gnarly combo. And
Gnarly
then
combo.
We can make it even gnarlier when we add into like other intersectionality of like, I was talking to my partner about this the other day about how I will over explain myself, especially in professional situations,
Yeah.
because I already know that people aren't going to take me seriously because I am younger, I am femme presenting, I am a person of color. And so I often over explain myself so that I sound like I know what I'm talking about, or no one can question that I know what I am talking about or what I am doing. And then add the fear of not being taken seriously on top of the fear of not reacting properly with the autism. And then it's just a whole big mess up in the brain.
It's really interesting to hear where some of our experiences overlap, because I also struggled with chronic depression, like predictably up until I got my diagnosis. And then we were able to start unpacking why is it that I constantly felt depressed, because similarly to you, I constantly felt it's like doing the best metaphor I can think of is it's doing a partner dance with somebody and being constantly a half step off the beat.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm able to catch up and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm able to hide it with great effort. But in so many situations, I'm a half step off the beat.
Yep.
And it just feels isolating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had you know what? This is where the ADHD intersects. I'm like, I had a point to that. I recall it being a good point.
It's in there somewhere. It'll come around. But we actually got quite a few questions already. So how do you feel about taking some of those? We're gonna start off with one from Twitter. Actually, I don't know, because Dr. B didn't tell me who this was. So you are
ADHD.
I don't have ADHD, but I feel this.
So in the spirit of Greg Miller from Kinda Funny, this is from Hip Hop Anonymous. Do you have any tips for someone struggling to stay focused and motivated while they're essentially running Linux and the rest of the world is on Windows?
Oh, my gut response is work with somebody who specializes in autism, who not just doesn't just understand it, isn't just comfortable working with it, because there's a big difference in mental health professionals who feel comfortable working with something versus specialize in it. And autism, especially in adults, is such a specialty field, because so much of what you're talking about there is you're talking about systemic oppression. You're talking about the fact that you are being asked to perform to the rest of the world's standards when you are on a different operating system. And we have more and more research emerging that it is exhausting and painful.
Yeah. My tip is, it's something I learned from like playing open world games And also just realizing there isn't often a correct way of doing things. There are just various different approaches, and the thing that has helped me so much with my own workload and how I operate and allow myself to function is just kind of working with my brain rather than trying to function against it and force it to work a consistent like model or work during consistent times when my brain just isn't braining. I like to describe it as like the how I approach it is very much like the open world game kind of scenario, where in an open world game there is not really a wrong play style. There are different ways of approaching different objectives, but no matter how you accomplish that objective, you're still playing the game. And that's how I've kind of started to approach my work and my deadlines and my schedules of it doesn't matter like how I get to reaching this deadline and accomplishing this this work or this assignment on time. The only thing that matters is that I did it and I hit the deadline. So if I end up working odd hours, I am very privileged and fortunate to have a flexible job where I can work on if my brain isn't working in the morning, I can work in the evening instead, or things like that. And just sort of letting my brain not necessarily dictate how I work, but stop trying to force it to work in the way that people say is correct or right. Other things that have helped me is realizing what takes more processor load for me. So something that for me has been a big struggle is remembering to eat. So
Oh,
so what I've done to help remind myself to eat, one is being with someone who also has like a regular schedule to remember to eat. So anytime they eat, then I'll be like, oh, I'm hungry now, I should go eat. Other things I've done is like doing away with the notion that you have to have like 3 meals a day, and instead of just doing the eat when you're hungry method, and just having a bunch of like pre-made snacks that are just kind of sitting on hand, like hummus cups or other things that I know I like and also are safe for me, so they don't actually take a lot of brain power to, if it's like a new food or a new experience that takes more brain power. But if it's something that I'm consistent and comfortable with, then I can just grab that from the fridge and eat it, and that reduces my brain load so much so I can actually do more.
well, you're talking about something I think that's important here, because so if we think about motivation, there's different theories of motivation, and one of them has to do with one, am I going to get rewarded for this?
Mhm.
2, are the goals doable for me? And 3, is that reward valuable to me? And there's so many there's so many problems with the way a lot of autistic folks are expected to function in a non-autistic or allistic world, is that one, the rewards for allistics often don't mean anything to us. Like there's so many things that my friends find, this was a big thing I going, if I do my work, I get to go to a really loud, flashy, noisy club where everybody's doing drugs but me in my 20s. Yeah, that sounds like a blast. No. So that reward, while it's there, it doesn't mean anything to me. But also there are legitimate skill gaps that may be there because either our brains don't work that way. Mackenzie brought up the idea of eating, and I immediately cringed because so many autistic folks, we struggle with what's called interoception and alexithymia challenges. Essentially, we can't tell what's happening physically in our own bodies until it hits a certain threshold. It's part of the reason physicians hate me, because I go in there, tell me on a 1 to 10 scale how much it
Oh my
hurts.
God,
I'm like,
I hate
I don't
that.
know.
I hate that. As someone who actually has chronic pain, it's the worst. It's so hard because it's just like, I don't know, man. I think I've had to start calibrating my experience and my responses to what will actually get me the care that I need rather than what I'm actually experiencing.
Right. I mean, okay. So my PCP, my primary care physician, has started to figure this out and has started giving me behaviorally anchored rating scale. So like a 5 means this, an 8 means this, and I'm like, I can work with this. All right, cool. I understand the metrics now.
Yep.
but it when it comes to motivation, there's any gap in that, whether it's the reward is not available, the reward is not valued, or we lack the skills or abilities to do it, that's a major problem. And so in my circumlocucious way of getting to points, the basically what Mackenzie said, working with your brain is going to be so important, figuring out, even if it's an eccentric way of doing it compared to how other people would do it, if it gets the job done, then it gets the job done. And it's not silly if it works.
Yeah. It's not silly if it works is the most like groundbreaking realization I had when it came to working with my brain. And just like it's one of those things where it's like, people will always say like, oh, you shouldn't like do X, Y, Z, like you shouldn't eat fast food that often, or you shouldn't, you should be a civilized human adult and like, use your dishes and don't use like paper plates and paper or plastic utensils and stuff like that. But if you don't have the spoons to do the dishes, but being in a dirty house makes your like depression worse, just use paper plates and plastic utensils and toss them out. You being fed in a way that doesn't work as a detriment to your brain, like you eating is better than not eating.
Yeah.
No matter like that's the bottom line of, even if it's like at midnight or at like 3 a.m. or you don't technically have a lunch, but you have like several like different snack points during the day. The minute I stopped berating myself for not eating lunch or not eating dinner or not doing something the way I was supposed to, that people told me I was supposed to do as like an adult, I've had so much more energy because I wasn't wasting so much energy just hating myself and criticizing myself for not operating the way I thought I was supposed to.
Oh my God, the guilt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, the guilt.
We got a couple. I think we have a couple in here that is talking about that, so we'll get to that one. I do want to get to another question just because for time, but I will say we'll get into more of this next week with the ADHD one. But yeah, remembering to eat is also a fun thing with ADHD. Literally the other night, I was hanging out on Discord with a group of ADHD people playing Diablo, and I went, "Well, I need to hop off because I need to eat something," and the entire chat went, "Shit."
Yeah. Yep, that would do it.
So we're gonna go to Coffee Nina. Coffee Nia, there we go. Question: just got diagnosed (parentheses finally) with autism and ADHD. What would be your advice to look for good resources for handling your daily hurdles that you meet? Since most of the first steps here are just trying to medicate the issue.
I mean, for me, I am not going to ever judge somebody for taking meds, because for what they're good for, meds are wonderful, especially if you've got a prescriber who listens to you and is knowledgeable on your topic, and collaborates with you on things. I will say from my own experience, it was life-changing to do that. And at the same time, pills don't teach skills. Well, something that I've discovered recently that I'm still investigating is goblin.tools.
I've seen you talking about this.
I just found out about it a couple days ago, and oh my God, it actually uses AI to help with break down tasks. And I have yet to put something in there that it doesn't know how to use its magic wand to break down. And there's even a variant of it that allows me to add social niceties to emails. I say what I think to say, which is just direct, and then I put it through the formalizer, and it gives me, corporate speak or allistic social niceties.
Oh wow, this is wild! I just tried this.
It's been pretty cool so far. Goblin.tools, and it's been really cool.
I put in do laundry, and then I hit the little magic wand thing, and full list of precepts: gather dirty laundry, sort clothes by color and fabric.
Yeah,
I'm doing that.
And you can do that with the subtasks too. But other than that, I look where I really started being able to find some good answers was looking at resource lists and organizations that actually had autistic folks in their leadership. So like the Autism Self-Advocacy Network.
Yep.
Very cool.
That was a good one. Then for ADHD stuff, I mean, I'm biased, but I'm not wrong. How to ADHD.
true. Any resources that you found, Mackenzie?
So I can't. I don't have too much experience like with formalized resources. As I explained previously, my diagnosis is the Schrodinger's diagnosis of a psychiatrist looked at me, told me I have autism, but never formally wrote it down.
Oh,
so
I missed that part.
no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a literal like because the person who diagnosed me was like, but you seem pretty well adjusted, so there's not much we can do. I never got a formal diagnosis, so I exist in the weird space of, well, a psychiatrist looked at me, said I had autism, but never actually gave me a diagnosis. So I don't actually have a lot of the resources I have overlap with a lot of folks who are self-diagnosed, which I'm personally of the opinion is totally valid because getting a diagnosis is something that is a very privileged thing, and there's a lot of steps and complications with it, especially when you present not like your boilerplate cis white man who is diagnosed with autism. But besides all of that, so what I have found really helpful is actually just like listening and finding other people like on social media who are autistic, and especially like other people on social media who are late diagnosed autistics and are learning and sharing their own tips on how to manage how they manage their autism, how they work with their brain, things that they have discovered, things that they struggle with. Because oftentimes when I hear from them, I'll realize, oh, this is something that is similar to how I do. Maybe I can try it. And then based on trying it, then I'll alter it and fix it and tinker with it until it works for me. And that has been the most helpful thing. It's just been listening to other people. Same way as it's been for you, Dr. B. The best way to get like advice and resources is from for other autistic people.
Yeah. That finding the community of like-minded folks was so important to a variety of things for me, and it sounds like it was for you as well. And that's just in terms of seeing where other people are on their journey of self-acceptance, hearing about some of their struggles, because people are at different points. I mean, some people are angrily rejecting the dominant, the dominant social norms. Some people are trying to synthesize. Some people, they just have different perspectives on this, and it's so helpful to see people who are and have people around who are validating to what I'm going through.
Yep.
Now I will say one of the there's pros and cons to anything.
Yes. Now
the pro of getting there are pros to getting a formal diagnosis. There are a lot of cons. Price and access being one of them. And also expertise potentially, because because diagnostics of adult autism is specialized on its own. Not everybody's hip to that. But there's also some potential cons of word of mouth community stuff, and that's potential misinformation.
Oh yeah.
So it's just take everything for what it's good for, and pay attention to what the downsides might be.
Oh yeah, no, take it with a grain of salt. Always like trust your gut. But I've always found if people are like, if like deep in their gut they hear about autistic experiences and they go, oh no, I relate to that a little too much. You trust your gut on that.
Yeah.
But that's normal, right? Oh honey.
Honey, no. Oh honey, baby, no. Yeah. No, I am an advocate of self-diagnostics within reason, and but I think a lot of people when they and this is not talking about you, it's just talking about other people who are very vocal against self-diagnoses, are saying like, oh, it's people just saying, oh, I think that is me, so I'm going to identify that. A lot of people who do self-diagnosis, they do a lot of like testing and asking and self-quizzing and self-examination. And I think like that process of self-diagnosing, I feel like that is valid, and I think people who after that seek to try and get a formal diagnosis is totally valid. And those of us who are just kind of like, now what? I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to speak to that for a second, because I'm sort of in a unique position of having one foothold in the personal autism experience and one foothold in the clinical world. And clinical diagnoses are really useful for what they're useful for, and what they're useful for is within a narrow margin. And at the same time, I am generally of the belief that self-diagnosis shouldn't have to be a thing.
Oh yeah.
I because there's a lot of potential for error given how many overlapping things are there. And at the same time, Mackenzie is 100% on the money with my experience of people who self-diagnose. It's not willy-nilly.
Yeah.
It's with a lot of forethought, a lot of consideration, a lot of research, and at the same time, it shouldn't have to be a thing. We should have enough infrastructure to give people the help they want.
Yep. And there should also not be any stigma with someone who gets a diagnosis and have that affect their medical care, which is another reason why lots of people don't get diagnoses, and another reason why I'm tentative about actually trying to find a official one beyond a psychiatrist just looking at me. Because I don't know how it's going to affect my medical care as an already multiply marginalized individual.
Yeah. And there's so many medical providers who don't understand some of the overlapping correlates between that. I have to, and it feels both a privilege and also a weird burden to be a clinical psychologist who ends up having to educate every medical provider I go to. When I ask the question, what do you know about autism in adults and how it affects medical care? And almost universally, the response is, I guess not much.
We're gonna go to the next question. Both are I got two questions from Caleb Moore, and Caleb, I'm gonna hold on to your first question for the Q&A at the end of the season, because I feel like we've talked about it a bit here. But I want to jump down to Caleb Moore's second question, which is how do you deal with the lack of adult resources for autism and ADHD? There only seems to be resources for kids and teens, but not much for adults.
Well, that's because we both ADHD and autism disappear the instant we turn 18. It's our 18th birthday present.
I remember being told as a kid, "Oh, you'll grow out of it." I had a medical professional tell me that. Yeah, it was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll grow out of it." So yeah.
Mackenzie, what do you think? I mean, like, how do you deal with the frustration of the lack of resources?
So it comes in two parts. One of the parts is accepting. One of the parts is just going, gosh darn it, people infantilize autism and it sucks. And I'm really upset about it. And just kind of sitting and accepting that salt and that anger. That helps. That actually, like, just accepting it and being like, that's a reality of autistic people are often infantilized. And that's what happens. And you just kind of sit with it and you can let yourself feel angry about it.
Like the little angry octopus.
Yeah, my little angry octopus. You gotta be angry.
I think there's a thin veneer of anger that I can identify with as well.
Yeah. But and I think the other thing is that I've still found that some of the resources that are addressed to children are still helpful. Like, it's one of those things where it's like it is a weird duality of going, God, I wish I wasn't infantilized. Also, this is kind of helpful. So, dang it. Like, oh God, it's the thing of like, if it works, but if it looks silly but it works, it ain't silly. That's how I feel a lot about things that are like marketed as childish and childlike, but actually like are really helpful. Like I'm a plushie fiend because plushies help with my sensory stuff. Is that childish? Maybe, but I have accepted it as something that helps me.
I have that with these little fidget popper things. Like, these have been completely marketed to, oh my God, that ring is so good. But these have been completely marketed to kids with like, oh, this one's Spider-Man and this one's Chewbacca. And I'm like,
wait, there's a Chewbacca one?
There is a Chewbacca one. It's really freaking cool. But like I'll look at them and I'll see adults looking at me. I'm just like, listen, you don't get it, and if you did, you'd be over here with me.
Yep.
Well, Mackenzie's bringing up something that a former supervisor of mine taught about, skills and therapeutic stuff that we teach. That I work with adults and adolescents. Typically, if it's a therapeutic skill and it works with kids, it works with adults, not the other way around. And there is often this hurdle of I'm supposed to be an adult and I shouldn't do X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah until it works. And people are like, ah, dang it.
Yep.
I have to
So, like,
reformulate how I think of myself.
Yep. So it's one of those things where it's like there is a definite gap in terms of resources being provided for adults, because lots of the resources that are provided are directed towards children and towards parents of autistic children, because that is when a lot of diagnoses happen for a variety of reasons that should eventually systemically be addressed. But and that sucks, and that should change, and there are wonderful folks and advocates who are working on getting that changed. On the other hand, sometimes the advice for kids works, and
dang it,
that's all right. Like, it is the societal notion of being an adult, once I got rid of that, also helped a lot with me, like, unmasking and helping deal with my own autism, just like allowing myself to like get really excited and visibly like happy about things, and stop and getting rid of that perception of having to be an adult has been super helpful.
You know what, on a similar note, what really helped for me, it was demoralizing the word normal. And making normal simply a situational statistical term, because the way we utilize the word normal is often conflated with the word good or acceptable.
Yep.
And normal is just what 2/3 of a population, how they would respond in a given situation, or 2/3 of their, people in a given situation, their state of being or whatever. And looking at it that way, abnormal could mean either end of that bell curve. Being having a career as a game designer is not normal, because it's not what 2/3 of the population does.
Yeah.
But it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
Being a psychologist is definitely not normal statistically. And so it's for me, it was decoupling the idea of good or acceptable with the term, with the concept of normal. You can be abnormal statistically and still be doing things just fine.
Yep. Yep. No, that is a very good point.
So we got another question that I think is going to be a fairly quick answer. This is from Lady_X, or the_Lady X. Question: is it possible to get an autism diagnosis as an adult, or is it something only done with for young kids?
I did.
There you go. So,
35.
Yeah. And so we're going to drop down to, this is going to be fun. Elrind Bishop. I'm going to go with that one. That's what it says. Yeah. Elrind Bishop. Yeah, we'll go with that. Question: I'm 42, but only recently with the autism awareness campaigns, I've begun to realize that I have a lot of autism traits. Is it worth getting, to get evaluated? Parentheses. I've thought about it, but for some reason I've never, it feels like a vain thing. Oh. I don't know about that last part. I don't see that as a vain thing.
A vain thing, B-A-N-E.
Vain, V-A-I-N.
Oh, vain, vanity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mackenzie, you want to answer this one first? I've got thoughts on this, but I don't want to dominate here.
So, I mean, this I feel like you have more experience that will speak to this. So I'll keep my sort of response very short. I think when it comes to whether or not you should get a formal diagnosis, always weigh the pros and cons of it. Like we talked before, there are lots of pros to having a formal diagnosis, but it does also deeply color how the rest of your medical care will be for the rest of your life. And if that's something that isn't something you want to deal with, that is valid, because it systemically sucks. I think there is merit. Personally, I think finding the pride in being autistic is not necessarily something that is vain, nor do I think it takes away from other people who also need or desire diagnoses. You getting a diagnosis doesn't harm or hurt, nor does it help the community. It just is what it is. So if it is something that you want to get more like specific medical help with, I think you should go for it. But in the end, it is entirely up to you how you want to interact with that and how you would like to identify it and how much you want to make it a part of your identity. But I will cede the floor to Dr. B.
I'm gonna speak more from a personal perspective here than a professional standpoint, and just talk about my own experiences in getting a diagnosis. It was so deeply validating. People very often flippantly say labels mean nothing, but I got to tell you, that label meant the whole world to me. That label gave me access. That label suddenly gave me a roadmap. That label gave me the ability to say, hey, this is what's been going on my entire life. And it's so common that there is a label for it. Now, my understanding evolved and it was a very misunderstood label, but that label still afforded me access to other forms of care, which became incredibly powerful and helpful in my. I wouldn't have the life I do right now without understanding that label. The best metaphor I've had for it is my whole life I was playing card games. I was playing card games at tables with rules I didn't understand, with cards I couldn't see. That label allowed me to look at my cards for the first time in my life.
We're going to go to Garwar's question. He says, how does a diagnosis... Well, actually, this is kind of answering what Dr. B just said. How does a diagnosis help ultimately? What happens can you do... It says, what happens / can you do after that to improve your quality of life? The one thing that I was going to add to the end of that one, like, obviously mine's coming from an ADHD perspective and everything like that, but knowing, like, even the self-diagnosis thing, if you're able to look at these things and respond to them and be like, hey, these resonate with me, these sound like things that I do and whatnot, and then going and looking at things that can help with that, of like tools people have come up with and everything like that, is it, like, from the ADHD side, that really helped, because all of these things that I was fighting every day tooth and nail to try and do better at, and finding out, no, that's just not how your brain works, was freeing in a way, because I went, oh, no, I'm just not ever going to remember to do this. I'm not going to form this habit. I'm not going to do this. And so it allowed me to stop pushing against this current that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
There is so much validation and just sort of getting a label for it. I think it is not the end all be all, but it is certainly a very helpful step in kind of accepting the way that your brain works and unpacking a lot of like genuine trauma of being in a society that doesn't accept the way that you are and won't tell you that clearly. There is so much like genuine just trauma and wear down that comes from that, and getting a diagnosis, while it is not the end point, it does certainly help you describe and discuss these feelings and the way your brain works, and in doing so help you connect with other people who resonate with that and can help you with that.
Yeah. Well, and to talk to something that just came up in the chat, I try not to directly argue with chat too much, but I am going to on this one. That, Lurking Writer, you brought up the idea that knowing is half the battle. It doesn't help too much to win the war. I disagree, because if you don't know what battle you're fighting, you can't strategize properly. And that's what it did for me. It allowed me to start realizing I was spending so much effort fighting the wrong battle. I had chastised myself for decades for not doing things quote unquote right, or the way I'm supposed to. And then found out, no, the things that I can't do, the things that I'm struggling to do are literally a disability for me. This would be not dissimilar to, when I injured a lot of things in the last 7 months, and I've been using a cane for the last 7 months, but it's it would, me chastising myself for not being able to do the things that my autism created disability around would be a lot like somebody chastising me when I'm using a cane for not walking faster.
Yeah.
I think like, so here's a concrete example that actually, like, after getting an autism diagnosis, like, genuinely helped me. Meltdowns. When I didn't have the diagnosis, I didn't know what those were.
Yes.
I didn't know why I was reacting that way. Once I finally got a diagnosis, I could clock when a meltdown was happening and go, oh, this is what's happening. Now I can fix the problem because I'm probably overstimulated by something.
Yeah.
So then I was able to find, or at least start looking for what was causing that overstimulation, and or try and find the tools to help me, like, help deal with the sensory overload. Before that, 100%. I didn't know why I was reacting that way. And that's just like a concrete example of how, like, getting a diagnosis and getting that language really helps.
I'm curious if your experience was similar to mine. Like, how guilty did you feel over having meltdowns to begin with? Like,
oh God, I felt awful.
Like, what's wrong with me that I react this way? Nobody else is.
Yep. Like that plus rejection sensitive dysphoria. Like, not understanding why I would react so badly when, like, plans would change, or when I got hit with surprises, or like just being like overwhelmed in social situations, or completely like shutting down. I'd feel so guilty because I wasn't understanding why I was reacting like that.
Just the confusion. Is it for this is something I've said about my experience, and it's resonated with a lot of other autistic folks I've known in life, that confusion is like anathema to our existence. Like social confusion, situational confusion, because all the rules that we've developed to cope with the world suddenly go out the window.
Yep.
And
it's
I feel untethered.
It has been a like life-saving realization to be able to recognize I am having stress because I don't know what's about to happen. And now I know what to do with it because I don't have right now, certain plans are nebulous, but once I like hit that realization, then I can go into the, okay, but what do I know? What can I control? What is about to happen? And that has been super helpful. So
yeah.
I want to get one last question here. I know we got a bunch of other ones. Please,
oh my goodness!
Remember that we are going to have a catch-up episode towards the end of the season, so we'll
not a mustard episode,
but we will relish in it.
Oh, hot dog! I love it.
Well done. All right, we're gonna wrap this up with Revro one. It says, question: is a self-diagnosis using online tool/tests for autism reliable enough, or should one try to get a professional diagnosis? And one of the things that I want to put with this is that I know someone, I'm not gonna name them or anything like that, who does think that they might have autism, and there's this level of work, like, they haven't told anyone else because they're like, I don't have that diagnosis, so I think it feels wrong to say that I do have that. So is doing these online tools or looking at this stuff and, you know, feeling that you resonate enough with it, is that enough to say yes I do, or do you feel like the diagnosis is needed?
Semper dependent.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Well, it because okay. The tools that we use professionally to diagnose things have different levels of what's, without getting into too much of a test construction lesson here, they have different levels of different types of validity and reliability. And we have to understand that to understand where they're useful. Do they have a certain level of validity and reliability, which are different things, within a certain population and not within another population? Well, we have to know those things. But there's also things, and these are technically different when it comes to tests as well, called sensitivity and specificity. One of them has to do with saying correctly in the affirmative. The other has to do with correctly ruling out other things. And so different online tests may be normed and reliable and valid. Some of them aren't. And also self-report inventories on their own without other collateral information aren't the most reliable source of things. because the first time I took an ADHD self-report inventory, I reported my symptoms in the 99.9th percentile. Are my symptoms in the 99.9th percentile in terms of severity? No, but that was a reflection of my distress level.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that psychologist came out.
Yeah,
I was 100% gonna field that question to you because I was like, this is the I don't. The answer is I don't know.
It depends. That's the
Yeah.
answer.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Yep.
we definitely couldn't have an episode of the show without that one. So,
Test construction. That's going to be a rip-roaring episode, that one.
With that, we got to start wrapping things up because we got a show coming up right after this. But Mackenzie, thank you so much for joining us today and being so open with talking about this. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really love talking about this sort of thing and being open with it. Because it's something that I have gone from being like, oh, I don't want to talk about it because I don't have it that bad, to no, I have it. It's bad, but not because I'm struggling, but because society is garbage. And now I want to talk about it and help people realize what autism looks like in other forms and be open about how I am and how I deal with it, because I think it's really important. So thank you so much for giving me a chance to blabber on about it.
I was going to say damn the man along with you, but my partner recently pointed out that as a 40-something doctor with a directorship position, I am the man. And that, oh, God, a little part of my soul died.
Well, Mackenzie, if people wanted to find you and what you do on the interwebs, where could they do so?
Yes, folks can find me on pretty much any social media at Mackenzie Lane DA. That is MAKENZIELANEDA. That's my handle over on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on most social media sites. Though I think I am slowly losing track of every new one that crops up these days.
Yep.
It's my handle on Twitch. I will talk about new releases coming up with D&D. I'll repost interviews that I do with the lovely D&D studio and my fellows over there. You'll also see any upcoming panel appearances I have at any conventions. I will be posting there. I'll also just post random stuff that I do, like dressing up as a barbarian for Pride.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Thank you. I put in so much effort for one joke.
Love it.
Commit to the bit.
Dr. B, what about you? Where can people find you?
I'm around.
Okay. Everybody have a good day.
Bye.
You can find me at the Dr. B, TheeDoctor, B as in boy, on all of the socials. But more importantly, follow Take This org on all the stuff. You can keep up with some of the resources that we're putting out, keep up with our mental health mission. We've had a lot of great stuff this month for our hashtag Pride is not a game campaign. There's just been a lot of really wonderful highlights in terms of games and queer friendly games or good representation. Our chair of the board, Cypher of Tyr, Tanya DePass, just put out a fantastic article on bi representation in games. Go check that out at takethis.org.
Heck yeah. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at the Treavor. There's an A hiding in there. And I don't know. Again, I don't know what's going on with the Twitch schedule anymore because I don't put that up. So be sure to check out our Discord, our Twitter, and our Reddit for that schedule. And you can see all the awesome fun shows we got, like New Game Plus, which is coming up right after this, unless you're watching later on YouTube, which you do what you want after this. But Mackenzie, once again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Mackenzie.
Thank you for having me. Genuinely, it's so much fun. I always love getting to chat with folks, and y'all are amazing.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
You're breathtaking.
You're wonderful.
That's gonna do it for this week's episode of Champion Psychology. So until next week, take care of yourself.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.